little bit closer. I got some thoughts for you on a topic that you can see the title of, that is really near and dear to me at this present time. Because, as on this channel here, I talk about everything. And I'm gonna do a better version of the same video a little bit later, coming soon. No apologies from me or no excuses either. I haven't been making the best content on this channel for a little while, but again, no excuses. The reality is I did need a break, while I got some other ducks in a row. So I'm about to get back to doing some screen shares and some breakdowns for you all, because I know that's really what most people like about this channel. And I haven't done any of those in a long time, so I'm looking forward to getting back into that groove. But it's going to be, um, just a little while before I really get back at it. But once I get going, we'll be back at it all the way. And like I said, this will be part of that content because, excuse me, this is a narrative that's come up all of a sudden about Toms and Sambos. And as you know, again, I dive directly into race issues on this channel. I talk about race in business because, again, the two intersect. When you're a black business owner, there's really no way to avoid these conversations about race, even though so many do. But it does you no service. You gain no benefits from avoiding the conversation. Again, as black people in business, these are things that we have to address, including the times. Black business people who are Toms. And there's a lot of them. There's a lot of black people who, in order to do business with other people, are fully sold out. I mean, they won't publicly speak out against any kind of wrong towards black people. If they are in a situation where they're speaking publicly, they're always in agreement with white folks, with the police. And they do this, again, because they think in their mind it's going to get them more money. I'm not going to spend a lot of time there. I do want to spend time on this new conversation that comes up. And full disclosure, I saw some film that came out, written by a black conservative. The name of the film is Uncle Tom. And this is where a lot of the conversation, the debate really got going. But this narrative sort of started about a year ago, I think, about maybe a year ago, maybe two, where somebody started saying that, no, actually, you shouldn't call Toms Tom. You should call them Sambo. Because, this is what these folks say. Because Uncle Tom's Cabin, who they assume the term is based on, it is, but it isn't. He was the hero in the book. He wouldn't tell where the slaves were hiding. He got whipped to death by Sambo. Sambo is actually the one that was trying to please Master and all this kind of stuff. Okay, so this is such an annoying thing that happens so often in our society. An idea will get thrown out there. It gains momentum. And then all of a sudden, it becomes the prevailing idea. And what people don't do is they don't stop and do any research whatsoever. They just go along with what everybody else is saying. And I wish y'all would do better because, again, first and foremost, there's an entire history behind this book that most of y'all haven't read. There's a history behind this term that most of y'all haven't read. And you're out here repeating some BS that you don't even know who made that narrative up. You don't know who started it. But you're spreading a BS narrative. And let me tell you why it's dangerous. Because now you got black folks arguing with one another over what name to call a sellout. So now when we're talking about a sellout, and again, sellouts are dangerous to black people. Sellouts work against black people. They do all they can to make sure that they're the only black who's elevated. They see another black person in business who's trying to make moves and do something positive for themselves and their family and their loved ones. A sellout feels threatened by that. They start working against that black person. Sellouts are dangerous black people. And again, when we get to talking about who's a Tom and who isn't a Tom, now all of a sudden the conversation is getting shut down. Oh, well, you shouldn't call him Tom. Actually, it's Sambo. Oh, well, And all of a sudden now, again, there are entire arguments going on. And, for those of us that actually know the history of the term, which I'm about to get into, when you push back and say, wait a minute, no, 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 no. It's Uncle Tom. It's not Sambo. We're not referring to what you're talking about. We know what this term means. We have an understanding of what this term means. We're not about to sit here and argue about who is what. We know what the term is. Let me get into it for y'all that are impatient, because that's part of the problem. Some of y'all are impatient listeners. You need everything in 30 seconds. You need everything in 1 minute. Look. Here it is. What you need, you need to research this. Don't take my word for it either. Don't make the mistake of doing what I'm criticizing people of doing now. Taking other people's word and not researching it for yourself. Do that. The book, Uncle Tom's Cabin, it comes out in, I think, 1852. At this time, black people are still enslaved. The majority of us are not allowed to read. If we are caught with the book, if it is discovered we know how to read, we are hung. The reason I share that is because black people weren't reading Uncle Tom's Cabin. Some of you know the Civil War came and went. Slavery doesn't end until about 1865. So we're talking about 13 years later where slavery is finally ended. Black people weren't reading Uncle Tom's Cabin. White people were reading it. And some say the book led to the Civil War because, according to the book, or according to historians, the book opened a lot of white people's eyes to the inhumane conditions of slavery and the inhumane treatment of slaves. And this is part of, again, I don't know if that's true. This is supposed to be part of the efforts to abolish slavery, which leads to civil war, etc., and whatnot. Again, this is what a lot of historians say about this book. But again, you need to do more research. Research the term Uncle Tom and understand why it's used the way it's used today. In response to the book, as kind of like a pushback, the same way white people do today. When we say Black Lives Matter, they say all lives matter. They're always in some type of antagonization type of relationship with black society. I have no idea what it is all about. It doesn't do anything but keep us all at each other's necks. It keeps hate and negativity alive. It's something I wish white culture would deal with within. And it's been controversial when I say things like that, because unfortunately, that's one of the differences between white culture and black culture. As a black person, we spend quite a bit of time examining our own culture, looking at what we can improve on, what habits and ideas we need to get rid of and lose, etc., and whatnot. So we do quite a bit of self-work. And this also, unfortunately, leads to a lot of arguments and fighting and whatnot. But it's because we didn't give ourselves the negatives that are in our culture. There's so many negatives that happen, and we didn't put those things into our culture. So we end up, again, fighting over what we want to hang on to and what we want to let go of. And sometimes the fighting sort of gets in the way, and we get too used to fighting. And that's sort of, again, why I'm addressing this, because now we're fighting over what to call a sellout. Listen, Uncle Tom, the way we use it, we're referring to a sellout. It is not related to the book. Okay, it is, but not really. Again, there was pushback. Whites began doing what were known as minstrel shows. Again, highly recommend you go out and watch a movie from Spike Lee called Bamboozled. It's one of my favorite films ever created. One of. It's slept on. But it is a movie about, again, it's so layered, so meta, so deep. It is a movie about how this society really won't let black people even see each other in a positive light. Like, that's how much this society oppresses our culture, how much they push negatives into our culture. There was a great positive show on TV, and the white executives were like, nah, we don't like this black show. We want something more of what we want to see. And so he goes and he makes a minstrel show, and then they love it. And again, it's meta. And if you know anything about minstrel shows were used to negatively depict black people and to negatively depict black culture. And to also, again, promote the stereotypes and the ideas that a lot of white culture believed in, especially at that time. So as a pushback to Uncle Tom's Cabin, there was something known as Tom shows. Go look this up. Tom shows were where the character of Uncle Tom was now changed into a different type of character. Instead of being a heroic character, they made him into a sellout. They made him into an apologist for slavery. They sort of started to use his image to represent a sellout. And these Tom shows went on for about 80 years in America. And so what you have to understand is that when black people began referring to sellouts as Toms, as Uncle Toms, they were not referring to the book. They're not referring to the book. They're referring to the Tom shows, the minstrel shows, the shows where Uncle Tom was not the character from the book, but the character from the minstrel shows, who was lazy, who was slow-footed, who would tap dance for white massa, yes sir, no sir, the stereotype, the negative stereotype, the one who said, "Oh, them blacks are so lazy," the Uncle Ruckus stereotype. That's who Uncle Tom became. And so for us to sit around today, spending valuable time and energy arguing with one another, falling out with one another, insulting one another. Oh, you don't have no education if you don't know about Uncle Tom's Cabin and book, and that's really what it is. It's really Sambo. It's like you want to have an intellectual masturbation contest where you want to sit around and try to fight over what you think you know. And truth is, you haven't gone and researched it and looked it up and tried to learn it for yourself. So no, again, I'm going to cut it short here. I'm going to come back with even more documentation for y'all to look at, because I know, unfortunately, I'm telling y'all to go look it up. Most of you won't, but you should. So you can have an understanding of context. Context always matters, especially in times like these. So closing out again, stop correcting black people. When we call a sellout a Uncle Tom, that's what we mean. Said what I said. See y'all at the top. Top Networkers Group. Thanks for watching.